Hi guys, and welcome to this week's lesson. Your I can statement is I can represent and describe decimals to tenths. So let's jump right in. At the beginning of the year, we talked about whole numbers and we put them in this place value chart. So for example, if I have 231, we all know that the 2 in the hundreds place doesn't represent 2. It actually represents 200. And then we also know that the 3 doesn't represent 3, it represents 30 or 3/10. And then we also know that the 1 here represents 1. And if we add those all together, we get 231. Now, what we don't know and what we haven't learned yet is about the numbers that happen to the right of the ones, and that's the numbers that are after the decimal. So we're going to talk about tenths today, and that is the number to the right of a decimal. These numbers here are 10 times smaller than the numbers in the ones place. So the numbers in the tenths place look like this. They are broken up into 10 equal pieces called tenths. And if I were to have, let's say, 2 of those tenths, I could write that actually as a fraction, which we're all familiar with as this, 2/10. Then, in order to write that as a decimal, we would do 0. This number represents, again, how many ones we have, and we don't have any wholes, so we have 0. Then you can say the and for the decimal, and 2/10. Let's erase that, and let's try another example. So, let's say this time I have 4 colored in. Well, that means that I have 4 of the 10 wholes pieces colored in, so I have 4/10. Ooh, that's messy. And in order to write that as a decimal, I don't have any whole numbers, so it would be 0 and 4/10. If I wanted to add 4/10 to my whole number up here on my chart to 231, I would add 4/10 here. So I would read this as 231 and 4/10. So let's go ahead and do some examples on the next slide. So you are going to need your whiteboard, a sock, and a marker. So we have our first example here. We have 1 shaded in. Section for this one would read 1/10. And how we would write that as a decimal is 0, because we don't have a whole piece colored in, and 1/10. And then word form, just like in our unit at the beginning of the year, for number sense, we would write 0 and 1/10. Tenth has a TH at the end. Let's go ahead and look at our next one here. So we have 3 pieces colored in. So our fraction would be 3/10. Our decimal would be 0 and 3/10, and our word form would be 0 and 3/10. Again, make sure tenths has that TH at the end. And then let's go ahead and look at the last one on this page. This one has a whole colored in. So when we're writing this fraction, we need to put 1 for our whole, then we need to do the fraction of our second part, and we have 8 of the 10 colored in. So it's going to be 1 and 8/10. Now when you're writing this as a decimal, we're going to have that number, so we have the 2 numbers here, the number that is in front or to the left of the decimal, that's the whole number, and we have 1 whole. So we have 1 and 8/10. And the way you would write that in word form is 1 and 8/10. Just like that. Okay, let's go to our next one. Erase your board. Okay, so our next one, we have 1 whole, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colored in. So again, for my fraction, I'm going to write my 1 whole, and then I have 5/10 colored in. Then for my decimal, I have my decimal point and I have my 2 numbers. I have 1 whole, I don't need to write 0 here, so I have 1 and 5/10. And my word form is going to be 1 and 5/10. sure you have that TH at the end. Perfect. Now, the next one here is not colored in, so I'm going to have to color it in, and I've been given a clue for my word form. So it says 0 and 3/10. So I know my fraction is going to be 3/10. I don't have any whole. My decimal is going to be 0 and 3/10. And then I'm going to take my pen tool and I'm going to color in 1, 2, 3 to show 0 and 3/10. And then my last one here, it's not colored, so I'm going to have to color it, but I am given my clue with the fraction, and it says 1 and 7/10. So my decimal is going to be 1 and 7/10. And then my word form is going to be 1 and 7/10. Make sure you have that THS. And then I'm going to go in and color. I have one whole, so I'm just going to go like this. So it's nice and quick. It's hard to draw here on the computer. 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now if I was doing this on paper, I would color it nicely. But now I have 1 and 7/10 colored in. So that is where we're going to stop our lesson. You guys are going to go back into the Chillin' with Chinkasing Week 7 document, and I have shared an entire folder of worksheets that you can work on to practice decimals to the tenths. Now it's not mandatory, but that will help you practice. And then you're going to go into Google Classroom, and I want you to complete the decimals to tenths Google form. Good luck!